What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Vine and Branches podcast. We got a guest on today, Charlie Horner. So we're going to get right into it. Hopefully you're having a good day, and if not, hopefully we can make it a little bit better. Charlie,
Yep.
so you don't have to share your name because I already said it, but what grade are you in, and were you raised in a Christian household? And then also talk about some hobbies, just to get to know you.
All right. Well, I'm going in as a freshman to high school, 14 years old, and been raised in a Christian household for my entire life. Both my parents are very rooted in their faith, and I do quite a bit of things for fun. I mean, I have a wide range of interests, is what I'm saying. So one of the things which you obviously know is music. I like to write and create music and play music. I play probably 8 instruments or something like that, and that's something that is really fun. Also, woodworking, and I enjoy running businesses with my friend Carson. So shout out to Carson. But so that's kind of a quick sum up of my hobbies and how all that is.
We got to get him on the podcast.
Yeah,
We'd like to get some people that we've never met, because I think it'd be interesting to totally get to know them on the podcast.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
So we know some stuff about music with you, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But I wanted to hear what your favorite verse or favorite book, and why that speaks to you.
Yeah, so I think one of my favorite verses for sure would be Psalm 23, and it's just speaks to me in the way of how the Lord really takes care of us. You know, he's our shepherd, and he leads us in green pastures and beside still waters, and he makes sure that even though when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, that we fear no evil because he's with us. And so just that he's always there taking care of us even whenever we don't realize it.
Dude, really cool. I memorized that whole chapter when we were a kid in China. Our mom made us memorize that, so that's funny you said that.
Same.
Okay, and what was your reason or the thing that caused you to give your life to Jesus?
That's a good question. I think honestly just the influences around me. You know, I could see my mom and dad with their testimonies and all that, and just their walk with the Lord, and I felt like I wanted to be a part of that. And so I think I was 6 or 7 or something like that. I started asking questions like, what is it like to have a walk with the Lord? And I remember one night I just sat in my parents' bed, and we just kind of talked it over. I don't remember exactly. I think we kind of went over the Romans Road a bit. And I got baptized in 2019. I think it was 7. I think 6 or 7.
Very cool.
I think I was 7. Yeah.
So, golly, Caleb. Sorry, inside joke behind the mic. Golly, threw me off.
I was waiting for that to come up.
So the next question I had for you is about your music. For all y'all that don't know, Charlie Horner has a YouTube channel out there. Go subscribe, Charlie Horner Music, correct?
Yeah.
It's just Charlie Horner Music.
Just real easy to find, yeah.
We're going to actually be recording some songs later today
Yeah.
to hopefully get them out there.
And we're going to be golfing.
And golfing. That's another one of his hobbies. I suck at golfing, but
so do I, but we both love it, don't we?
It's fun to be really bad at it. So we're going to go golfing and do some music. So definitely go subscribe to that. I wanted to share a little bit something about your music and then let you talk about it. We didn't post the podcast because we didn't like it, but we did a podcast talking about youth camp. Charlie Horner came to youth camp, and he won Camp's Got Talent with one of his songs. It was absolutely insane. I mean, blew him out of the water. It was amazing.
God.
So, why did you get into music? Was it something that came naturally? Did you have to work at it? What was that like?
Well, I for sure had to work at it. I mean, that's something that I feel like, you hear about a lot of people, they start learning piano and then they just give up because it's too hard. And that was kind of what I wanted to do. So my mom is a double major. She has a major in music, and she got a major in engineering. And so, but yeah, so one of her majors being music, she's just really musically talented. She can play piano like nobody I've ever met before. And like Dawson Shell, you've heard him play, right? She's a lot like him. I would go as far to say better. She hasn't played in a while, but yeah, she plays for our church and stuff. So whenever I was like in pre-K, she started teaching me piano, and she started teaching me how to read music, and it just kind of went in an upward spiral from there. Like I learned piano for a few years, and then whenever we moved here, I think that was 2018 or 20 no, it was 2017. We moved to Stephenville. We were in Waco for a year, then we went to Stephenville. And once I went here, I went to a school called SCS, which is Stephenville Christian School, and same guy who used to be our youth pastor at Cornerstone, where we go to church, was the music teacher there, Kevin Pinner. Awesome dude. I mean, like, Kevin, if you hear this, man, you really got me going in music. And anyway, he kind of started to show me other things. So I could already play piano, and he showed me some basics of drums, and he got me hooked on guitar. And so that was my next thing, is I started taking guitar lessons with Carol Parham here in Stephenville. Carol can literally play anything. Like, he's played with Charlie Pride, Marty Robbins, who's wanted to get him on his band and stuff. Like, this guy's just legendary. And so he's been teaching me stuff. And so from guitar, I've branched out into like bass, mandolin, banjo. I took a fiddle lesson last week, just trying to feel it out. So yeah, that's kind of how it's been. But I've just really fallen in love with music. Like, from the day I was born, my mom kind of knew that I would use my voice for something. The nurse came in and she said, like, Miss Sarah, your baby is the loudest baby in the hall. Like, literally they could hear me all the way down the hall. And she said that's whenever she knew that the Lord gave me a good set of pipes for something to praise his name. And so, yeah, I think it's mostly genetics and providence, like what the Lord has in store for me. Fate, some might say, but yeah.
Dude, that's really cool. That's a really cool story. So, how many songs have you written?
Oh gosh, I don't know, honestly. I think I actually forgot my songbook today, so recording's going to be something interesting. But I've got a songbook that is probably about like a quarter way full of songs, and it's like, it's a good little journal. So, but then also there's some that I don't even have in there. Like, writing is it's an active hobby. You don't publish everything that you write. There's a lot of songs that I've written that just aren't great songs. I was just writing them for practice. And so, yeah, there's really no way of me knowing.
Very cool. See, I have no idea what that's like, because I do not write music. I would not be that good at it. I'm good at rhyming because I like rhyming words, and I'm good at poetry because I've taken poetry classes. But like song, I don't know. I couldn't do it probably.
It's interesting. It's tough. Like, I need to write more. I've talked to professional musicians, and they're saying like they're writing at least 100 songs a year, but they're only publishing at most 10 out of that 100.
Whoa, that's crazy.
The ratio is very intense.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's a lot. You always wonder what they do, and if I've always wondered, like, somebody famous that doesn't post that much, like, do they just take a lot of vacations because they got a ton of money and all that? But I don't know.
No, a lot of people write a song every day, whether it's good or bad. They force themselves to write a song. I mean, you see this with, some great song, like Zach Bryan, for instance. It's not great lyrics, but it is great lyrics, not a great message. But his songwriting is phenomenal. But that's just because he's written a lot of songs. Like, the guy's written so many songs. He's only published, I doubt he's published half of the songs that he's written. I highly doubt that.
Wow. Very interesting. Very interesting. So, what all instruments can you play?
Oh, Lord.
We know you can play guitar. We know you can sing. Like, both of those, insane. And electric guitar, right?
Yeah, so if you count guitar and lead guitar as two different things, and then, so guitar, electric guitar, acoustic and electric, you play them differently. Piano, those are like the three biggest things. Also bass, like, that's kind of what I play for our youth band is like those 4 things is the main ones. Then I know how to play drums. I mean, I know how to play mandolin. I know how to play ukulele. I know how to play banjo. Because just with stringed instruments, you can kind of transpose the string patterns and learn things quickly. So, I can. I haven't named everyone, but I mean,
You sounded so like my brother right there. You can just pick up a stringed instrument and just transpose.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Well, we'll sample a song at the end of the podcast if we get one recorded.
That would be awesome. I'd like to get an entire song recorded today. It's a time crunch, but that would be awesome.
So stay tuned for that if we do that. So, what has been something? I heard something recently. Somebody said, I don't know if I heard it on YouTube Short or a podcast because I listen to a ton of podcasts. But I heard something where this dude said, we're always like, well, what did God do? So we read the Bible of what Jesus did. And then we read Revelations and we look to the future. What's God going to do? But then we never think about what God's doing. So is there something you would say maybe God's done in your life recently? Maybe we just got back from the Colorado men's trip that you were on, or maybe it's like a book in the Bible that you're reading or something like that. What's one thing you think is going on right now, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so that is something actually that I think about a lot, especially not just me, but in general. But to answer your question, is like something that God's been doing in me is to, I think he's been trying to get me more disciplined in my faith. Like, there's a lot of times where I don't read my Bible at night just because it's late and I'm like, I'm tired. I don't have the energy to do this. But so I got back from camp, right? And it's very intense faith week, I guess you'd say. It's very intensely faith-filled week. And so I get back home and I start thinking about I'm reading my Bible on the back porch and kind of journaling a bit, and the Lord speaks to me. He's like, you realize that there's no such thing as losing sleep over me. If you read your Bible late at night and you're super tired, I'm not gonna, I'll replenish that energy. You're spending time with me. That's priority. You can lose some sleep for that, but also if you're spending time with me, that's something that, I have the power to give you more energy throughout the day. So you can just ask me, hey, I'm going to need energy tomorrow. I've got a big test, or I've got a big business deal going on. I'm going to need you to give me some supernatural energy so I can spend some time with you tonight. And that's kind of something that he spoke to me with. I'm like, I actually like that. That helps. I hadn't think about that. I mean, it's crazy some of the little things that you don't think about to ask of the Lord. Like, man, I'm tired. I don't want to read my Bible. Lord, can you give me strength? like it's so simple, right? But I mean, I like to think a lot about just the revival that I feel like is happening in our country. It's crazy. You look back and you think, man, I wish that we could have the same religious foundation that we had, even 30 years ago is a lot better, and it feels like our Christianity in the country and in the world is just plummeted downhill. But you start looking at artists like Forrest Frank, who's blowing up right now, Brandon Lake, and you think, I feel like maybe Christ is coming back. I mean, I was recently at a Forrest Frank concert. You were there too. And it was he said this quite possibly might be the largest gathering of believers in the country right now. And I thought, okay, that's crazy. You've got a stadium full of believers worshiping on the, and some of them aren't believers. Some of them might have came to faith through this concert. And so and that's kind of why he wrote the song Celebration, if you're familiar with it. Yeah, I know you are. I'm talking about the people on the podcast. But yeah. But I mean, that's just crazy to think too. Just the revival that's going on in our country right now, and some people aren't really talking about it, but I feel like that's definitely existent and that's definitely going on, and I think that's something to be celebrated.
Absolutely. And I was talking to my dad. A lot of people today would be like, oh, this generation is going so far downhill. But in my mind, sometimes I think about it, and I wonder if it's not that it's all going downhill. It's just that because of technology and phones and everything, we hear about all the bad things that happen. Yeah. Whereas 50 years ago, they didn't hear about all of it. It just happened behind the scenes, and you never heard about it.
That's the big thing with social media in our society right now. Yeah.
And then it makes it look like the generation is like just plummeting. But anyways, we were talking about that. Dude, the Forrest Frank concert was crazy. That was really awesome. So, yeah, and I think that thing about reading your Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday, I was going into work, and my coworker was going to do the feeding the animals because that's what I do for a job. So I was going to be weed eating all day. And they're like, you can come in early so it's not as hot and leave early. I said, oh, really? So I got up at 4 a.m., made me a latte, went and weed eated for 8 hours straight.
Golly.
And then got off at 1, went out to lunch with my dad because he was on lunch break. He took a late lunch break at 1. And then I came home, and I'm like, I'm going to take a nap. And I was like, no. I'm gonna read my Bible first. So I read my Bible, and I'm not kidding. My nap was so good. I slept so hard. So I kind of agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
That he's not gonna let you like run out of energy and stuff when you give him that time.
Well, heck, I mean that goes back to the 23rd Psalm we were talking about earlier. Is like, He is our shepherd; we shall not want. He gives us exactly what we need. You know, we don't need to worry about that stuff. I mean, the Bible talks about it all the time. And so that's just something cool to see with that.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, it is very cool. So, anyways, next question I want to hear from you is, this is a new question. I don't think we've ever asked anybody this. But what would be your go-to point for proving God to somebody? Let's say they're, I don't know, atheist or whatever. What would be your go-to point to prove God's existence?
Okay, so if you've listened to the podcast before, you would have heard this episode, but it was with Justice. And actually, I feel like y'all hit the nail on the head. I think, was it you, Caleb, or some? You were saying that all religions acknowledge Jesus, and they all say something about Jesus, and they all agree that he was a good man. He was a very good man. He did good for the earth. And so you go look at what all these other people say about Jesus, and then you think, well, what does Jesus say about himself? He says, I'm the way, the truth, and the light. Nobody enters heaven but except through me. So,
dude, love it. Yeah. It's a really interesting thing that all these people acknowledge him and then say, but he's not the Son of God. He was just a person.
Yeah. And actually, there was, I don't remember exactly how he explained it, but it's like a very long, elongated version of what you were saying, what I'm saying. But this guy, his name's Kevin, I forget his last name, but he's at First Baptist. He's the children's minister. Y'all should have him on because he has, you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, Kevin Allen.
Yeah.
I actually just heard the other day he has a podcast.
Does he really?
Apparently. So, yes.
You should do a collab because he explains it so beautifully, but it's also simple. But like, I remember I was in 3rd grade listening to what he had to say, and I'm like, that just, because before that I was like, okay, I don't really have any proof that the Lord is real, but I just believe it through my faith. And but I don't know, maybe I was in 5th grade. But anyway, he said, he explained that to us as a class. He came and taught us Bible one week. By the way, we go to a Christian school in Stephenville called White Horse. So we have like a Bible class every day. And so he came and taught that class one day. And he explained that, and I'm like, that makes so much sense. So now I know the Lord is real. I know this happened. The Bible's valid. And so, if you could get him to explain that to you, it'd make just boom. I had like an epiphany there.
Oh, yeah. Dude, I haven't ever heard him explain it. I talked to him a lot because, like, one of his oldest daughter was in my brother's graduating class. So we know their family, like, decently well. My cousins, the Andrews, go to church with them. They go to First Baptist, too. So we know them pretty well. And the other day, I was talking to my cousin about the podcast. And he was like, yeah, Kevin Allen does whatever podcast. And he posted to, because we were looking at how to get it on, like, Apple Podcasts or Pandora and all these things. And so Kevin Allen gets it on there. And so I was like, dude, Kevin Allen does a podcast? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So, very interesting. Next question I have for you. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what would you say the hardest struggle is, or whether it's like hardest thing to believe, like the biggest flaw you think, or whatever that might be. What's let's say one thing that I question in my mind or something I can't comprehend is, let's say, like God being outside of time. Doesn't make any sense. Now, it doesn't make any sense to really anybody because we can't grasp it. But like, what is something that you're like, it's hard to wrap your head around?
Okay, so yeah, so that's a good question. I would say, and I feel like there's a lot of things. Like, I can't really put a finger on exactly one thing, but like, I guess I can because I'm doing it. But like one thing that is hard for me to understand and just like get is how much God actually loves us, like his unconditional love. There's no way that we can understand that as humans. It's impossible, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, quite literally, probably impossible.
Like, we see a small amount of unconditional love, like with our fathers. We were talking about this in Colorado, right? And my dad said something about like that God's given a father a small amount of unconditional love for his children. But like the fact of how much more God loves us than our fathers love us, I'm like, that's just mind-blowing. Like, it's hard to understand how much a father loves you until you are that father. And so,
yeah, I would agree. And the point of something that always baffles me is, no matter like let's say when you look at somebody that in our minds we want to judge or something like that, that he loves them like unconditionally. It's like, it's mind-boggling because like even my brain doesn't immediately want to do that. It wants to judge. You know what I mean?
yeah, and to think that thought seemingly doesn't even enter the Lord's head. Like, he just loves them, and he forgives them. He just says to ask to be forgiven, and you are forgiven.
There's a verse in Proverbs that I read recently that says, like, if you basically if you insult like a homeless man or you like treat them wrongly, then you're insulting his maker. And so what does that mean? That means everybody's made in the image of God, and so when you treat somebody without the respect that you would treat God with, then you're basically just slapping God in the face, because God made that person uniquely and he put them there for a reason.
It also talks about showing no partiality. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would agree. One thing I'm going to ask you all this, and what do you think, is when it talks about that, I've read that, and I obviously don't go around talking bad about people unless they're close friends. So do y'all think that's in the same way? So if I trash talk Caleb because he's my friend, or Justice, or people like this, does that make it, is that bad too? What would you say?
Well, I mean, I trash talk my friends a lot, but it's jocular. Like, I feel like the real correction I bring to them, I bring it in a polite way to their face. But is that what you're saying? Is like saying like, "Oh, bro, you're so bad," and like laughing about it? Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's just pure fun, in my opinion. I mean,
I would
if
agree.
you're actually to your face like, you are trash, like, and you're serious about it, I feel like that's wrong.
Yeah.
But if you want to bring up an issue, you could do it respectfully in a sense that isn't wrong.
Yeah, you're just trying to help them improve.
Yeah.
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 Exactly. Agree. Okay, well, let's get into this about the whole concepts to wrap your mind around that are hard. About God being outside time, and when he made Adam and Eve in the garden, whether the plan was to be in the garden or he knew obviously he knew everything all along. But all that, and is God all knowing? Because also, what about this? People always say he's God all knowing and he can do all things. But I've read certain things, and I want to see if y'all agree, is number one. It says he casts our sin as far as the east is from the west, and that like he holds no record, like he totally forgets it, the past. So then it's almost like he doesn't know that. And then I've also heard that there's a couple things God cannot do. I've heard one thing: God cannot die. Number one, God cannot lie. And then I heard another that was interesting, is they said God cannot learn, because if he is all-knowing, how could God learn?
That is interesting.
So, anyways, what do y'all think the Garden of Eden was the plan all along?
You know, I feel like a lot of this stuff we won't really know until we ask him face to face. I mean, like, is there really a way of knowing? And I'm not as deep into my word as other people maybe. So there might be a place in the Bible that says what the plan was, but I feel like there's a lot of things that we don't know that we won't know until we get to heaven. And I feel like that probably will be one of them.
For me, when I think of how God kind of created the earth and the heavens and all this, and like I go back to Genesis 1 and I read all of it, it's clear to me that there's an obvious like original design that God made. And so God created everything, and he looks at it and he goes, okay, it's good. And so to me, this is where, he's looking at Adam and Eve and he's saying that's a good marriage, And so these things are all original designs, what God intended for the earth. Obviously sin messed it all up, whatever. But we also know that in the Bible, it also talks about him creating a new heavens and a new earth. So that proves to me that, one, Garden of Eden was the standard, was his expectation. Now, did he know that Adam and Eve would sin? Yeah, he did. But because love hopes all things, he loved Adam and Eve, and he was hoping that they wouldn't. There's a difference between knowing and hoping. He knew that we were going to sin, but he was hoping that they wouldn't. So,
yeah.
In my mind, the Garden of Eden is the original design, and God is going to come back, and he's going to restore his original design.
Also, about the not understanding things, I've shared this on the podcast before. My dad said something to me one day, and I never forget it. I'd love to use this quote, but he said, if we could understand everything about God, he wouldn't be that great of a God, right? And so, like, the things that we can't understand about him just go to show how much greater and bigger he is than us.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, rabbit hole. Do you have anything else about the whole Adam and Eve?
Not exactly on the Adam and Eve, but I can see, like, at least with our answers, our train of thought is more based on what is not than what is. And so, like, and I kind of think about that too a lot, like, especially with purpose in life. Like, if you are not dead, you have a purpose. I mean, it's kind of cool to think about things like that. Like, if this was the situation, this would be different. You get what I'm saying? Instead of, I don't know.
No, that makes total sense. That makes total sense.
I want you to get back to the question that you asked, like talking about, like God can't do certain things. I think we should talk about that. What was that about?
Are you talking about I heard this, there's a book that I read for a paper, and then I heard something else. So they come from different spots. But I heard multiple things that they talked about God cannot do. Which, number one, I heard this somewhere, and it was the question of, well, God is all-knowing, but then it also says he casts our sin as far as east is from the west, and he keeps no record of wrong, so that when we repent, it's almost as if he just totally wipes what we did from his brain, and he doesn't remember. But still, in a way, I think he's all-knowing, and it's not that God is forgetful in the fact that it's a flaw like we are. Like, we forget things, and I forget things so easily all the time. But I think God's isn't a flaw. I think his is a choice. But the main thing we can talk about is in a book, I believe it's called The Sovereignty of Man by Chuck Missler, I think. Anyways, he says there's three things God cannot do. God cannot die, God cannot lie, and then God cannot learn. Because if God is all-knowing, he can't learn. And so these are three things that God cannot do in a way. And it also brings up the question of everybody asks, can God make a rock that he can't lift? Anyways, what do y'all think about that?
So can God make a rock that he can't lift?
Yeah, or the other things that said, like, God cannot die, God cannot lie, and God cannot learn if he's all-knowing.
I feel like that's valid. Like, if he's all powerful and there's nothing impossible with God, I mean, I don't know. That's interesting to think about.
The rock question is just a circle that people say all the time, and it's just to, like, almost annoy you, because it's like, well, yeah, he could make it.
I forgot what
like,
you call that, but
my brother would know. He's good with words, but he loves those things that, like, run you in a circle. But what do you think about the three things that in the book the dude said God cannot do? Would you agree?
I mean, I would say I agree. Or even if he could, I don't see any reason why he would. So, I mean, that's not one of those things like, is it out of the question? Like, why would God die whenever he wants to live and create things? I feel like that's another thing. Like, God created humans in his image, and he gave us a lot of traits that he has. So, like, one of the things is we're creators, we're builders. And just as a society and as a people, that's what we want to do. I mean, you look at how our technology has advanced, and I'm not even talking about like computer tech. I'm saying like just actual gadgets and doodads that humans make has advanced over, just look over the past 100 years, and you go from mechanics to computers, and so I feel like God's the same way. And so if he could die, I don't think that he would. I don't know if that makes sense.
Or if he could lie, you don't think he would? I would agree with that. Like, he would never lie, or he would never do certain things.
But then again, he's not mortal, so there's no question of him dying. So like, that's what mortal means, correct?
Yeah,
is that
he's immortal.
He's immortal, and so he can't die. So yes,
Yeah.
that's off the question, right?
But here's an interesting question. You said he made us in our image. In a way, not obviously not our bodies, because our bodies were cursed to die, and so our bodies are going to die. But our soul is actually eternal. Some people would disagree, but I believe that heaven and earth, or heaven and hell, whichever one you go to, is eternal. Some people believe that hell isn't eternal. I believe it is eternal. But so either way, your goal of where you're going is going to be eternal, and so in a way, your soul's eternal too, if that makes sense. Have you ever thought about that? Do y'all think that brings up another question I'll ask, because I've heard some podcasts of people that don't think this and read books about it. Do you think hell is eternal?
So from what I was raised on and the theology that I know, I would beg to differ. Because, like, our God's a merciful and graceful God. He doesn't... I mean, he came down to die a mortal death. He came down from paradise to die a mortal death to save us. So I feel like if you've ever heard of the concept of the lake of fire, to where your soul is thrown in a lake of fire and just forgotten. Now, that might mean an eternity of nothingness, like you just don't exist and you don't exist for an eternity. And somehow your soul knows that. Like, I know that's kind of far-fetched, but like I feel like our God isn't the type to torture us for eternity, because that's evil.
So that's what I've heard other people say too. So I've heard podcasts and somebody said this question. They're like, well, why would God, how do you say it? He said something like, why would God punish us to hell forever for a lifetime of sin? Interesting. However, and I don't think it changes much. I mean, changes some stuff, but not necessarily about believing in Jesus. But like, I would think hell is eternal because, well, number one, in Revelations it talks about eternal fire and smoke coming from the ground, and but Revelations is confusing in and of itself.
Yes.
I mean, there's a ton of stuff in there, but that actually brought up another question that maybe we can get into in a second about the end times and not being clear. I heard something really interesting on that. But Caleb, do you have anything you want to say about? No, you don't have anything. Okay, then I'm gonna jump straight into that. But yes, it's a very interesting question that I've heard people ask: is hell eternal?
And
that's very interesting.
And really, I mean, I like to simplify things just so my mind can comprehend it. I like to think deep, but then come with a simple, like, moral of the story type deal. And so I think the moral of the story with that would be like, well, I mean, we know that we don't want to go to hell either way, so let's just not do it.
Let's just not test
let's just
that
go to
out.
heaven, and we
let's not stay to find out if it's eternal.
Let's not test that theory.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, here's something I heard crazy interesting that I thought of when I mentioned Revelations, and I heard somebody talking about this on the Old Testament and in a way the New Testament. You could relate it back to. But they talked about in the Old Testament, you see all these prophecies of Jesus coming back to earth and all these things of, oh, he's going to come back and all this. And so when Jesus came back, they all thought he was going to come back and rule the kingdoms, right? Mm-hmm. But he didn't. He came back and then he died for him.
Yeah.
Well, why was that not prophesied that they were going to kill him and they're going to die for his sins? I heard this interesting thing is the reason it wasn't prophesied in that way is because if God explicitly said the whole plan, the demons and devils would have known and therefore wouldn't have killed him on the cross. Does that make sense? So it was really interesting that, because obviously the devil knows the Bible, because we read that Jesus and the devil are on the mountain and the devil's quoting scripture to Jesus to try to tempt him and twisting the words. So he was talking about the fact that the reason it didn't explicitly say that they're going to kill him and that's why it's actually going to be his plan to die for our sins is that if the demons knew that that was the plan, they would have never killed him in the first place. Because we also see that the devil entered Judas and Judas sold him out, which is a whole another aspect of like the way the devil was trying to kill Jesus. But he didn't know that was the plan all along. And so then the question is, are there things about the end times, which I think I would agree, reasons why the angels and us and people don't know the whole plan, like don't know the time, don't know any of this, is so that, like, his plan is going to work out and he knows it. And does that make sense? Does that make sense? That was a crazy epiphany I had when I heard that.
Yeah. I think it definitely matters. I think it also breeds faith. Like if we don't know the whole plan, like I like to plan out in my head, oh, in 5 years, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. I don't know the plan that God has for my life, but I like to plan it out. And sometimes a lot of times my plan doesn't even work. And so I'm relying off of faith that God said, I have good plans for you. And so if I knew the plan already, then I wouldn't have any faith that was true. I think it's the same kind of concept.
Yeah, I would agree. And technically, because it's different when Jesus was on earth and fully human. At the end times, it's not going to be he's not going to be the human whatever. So technically, even if the devil knew, he's not going to stop God. But when God was human, the killing and all those things, he had to have the plan work out like that. So I thought that was really cool way to describe that. That was really interesting. So
I want to kind of go back to, is hell eternal? I just want to ask, like, I guess Charlie, what in your mind is the difference between angels and humans?
That's a good question. And and like I said, I'm not great at quoting scripture, but the Bible does say that we're set apart from the angels. And so, like, in my mind, I'd like to imagine angels, sorry. Angels is almost like, I know it sounds like bad, like it sounds evil, but I'd like to imagine angels as like God's minions. And it sounds bad to the word, but like what I'm saying is they're not equal with humans. Angels, their only job is to praise God and to carry out his will, which is our job as well, but I feel like we're almost like, it's hard to explain. That's a good question. I feel like I'm not putting it into the
So
correct.
my next question that I'm trying to like snowball into is, why do you think that we get this gift of repentance and Satan and his fallen angels don't?
Because we're different, are we not?
In what way though?
That's hard for me.
I
to
mean,
explain.
we're all created beings.
You've stumped me. I just know that we're different than the angels.
He's saying like we're different than the angels in the fact that we're different from the animals too. Like we're specifically
Yeah.
made.
Well, here's how I put it. Does the Bible
But-
say that angels are made in God's image?
No,
But we are.
right? I agree,
There's a difference.
but I don't think that that's the reason that we get repentance and the angels don't. I would say, I don't know if y'all would agree, but I would say the angels are smarter than us in terms of intellect.
Wow.
We are, you know, what I'm trying to get at is that we on this earth are the most intelligent species. You know, we've created all these things, we do all this stuff, but I would argue that angels are more intelligent. They're more aware, not only because, you know, God created them that way, but also just because they're in this heavenly realm. So they're seeing all these things and they're like
That's a good
seeing
point.
it like word for word.
I got a question because I've heard multiple people answer this different ways. So I want to hear you. Do you think hell is like not eternal in the fact that you're tortured and then you like cease to exist or whatever? Or do you believe, because I've also heard some people believe you like go to hell for a short amount of time and then go into heaven after being tortured for a little bit? Which
I
one
think
do you
that's
think?
wrong. I don't think you re-enter heaven.
Afterwards. You just
No.
think it's almost like you cease to exist.
I think you cease to exist. I think whenever the Bible and people, and I've heard, I don't remember exactly who from. I imagine probably something like my dad, but I've heard that I think it was King James who made up the idea of hell being an actual like torture room, and that was made up to scare Christian or people into Christianity and to believe in God, and I feel like that could be valid. And I don't know the history behind it. My whole family, they're history buffs. Like, so, you know, you'll be talking something about like this to my dad, and he brings up something from the 1400s that happened, and you're like, oh, so that's why this happened. So I would imagine it was my dad who told me that, but I feel like that's valid. I mean, because people did that back then. People would try to manipulate their kingdoms into whatever they're doing. So I could see that, but I feel like the torture that the Bible would talk about, or that the real torture is being separated from God. I think whenever you hear the Bible or whoever in the Bible talking about torture, that's really just separation from his presence, like knowing that it exists and knowing that it's great, but not being there. It's like almost like, imagine you get to go on the coolest vacation, right? But then all of a sudden you accidentally like make a mistake and your parents say that you can't go. It's so much worse than just not going to begin with, because you thought, I had that shot, but I missed it. And so now they're off having fun without me, but I have to stay home and do chores, you know? And so I think that's a lot like how hell would be, is if you're not just, if you don't just cease to exist and your soul still is around, I'd imagine it'd probably be like just passing time. Like, I can't believe I'm not in heaven right now.
Yeah, I was about to say, so like let's say that that's what hell is like separation from God, and I think that's like part of the reason why it's so bad. You're gonna get up to heaven, you're gonna see the glory of God, and then you're separated. And But what you're saying is like, if hell is not eternal, then you're away from God and for so long, and then it just stops. Like,
I mean, and like I said, I've heard different things that I feel could be valid, and it could be a combination of what I feel could be valid. But I mean, I've heard we have friends that I forgot what you call them, call the denomination, but they believe in the Holy Spirit and they believe in the Lord, but they practice Jewish traditions, and they believe in the lake of fire and that you just cease to exist. And I feel like that's valid because our God's a merciful God. And I also feel like whenever the Bible talks about torture, it's being separated from God. So maybe that means when you're thrown into the lake of fire, your soul ceases to exist, and therefore you have no connection with God, and that's torture. It's just not being. Does that make sense?
Yes, and the absence of God's presence, I totally agree with that. In the fact that on Justice's podcast, we talked about heaven, basically the whole point is God's
Being in
presence.
God's presence, yeah.
And hell is literally like the opposite, like totally ceasing. Whereas on earth, it's almost like a mix. Like we get to kind of choose. God, come live in my heart, or no, I don't really want to have anything to do with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's almost like a mix, and then hell is like totally God's nowhere in it. And then heaven, he's everywhere. Does that make sense? So I would agree with that.
Yeah. I wanted to go back real quick, and I didn't really catch the entire thought that you had, but you said that you were wondering why there was no prophecy of the crucifixion. Like, nobody knew what was happening. I found this. I've been looking for it, so that's what I was doing on my laptop. But I feel there was prophecy of the crucifixion.
If you look into stories,
Yeah.
technically you can see connections.
Yeah, like Psalms 22 says, "Dogs surround me, a pack of villains encircles me. They pierce my hands and my feet. All my bones are on display. People stare and gloat over me. They divide my clothes among them and cast lots for my garment. But you, Lord, do not be far from me, for you are my strength. Come quickly to help me. Deliver me from the sword, my precious life from the power of the dogs. Rescue me from the mouth of the lions, and save me from the horns of the wild oxen." That's King David writing a song.
Yeah, exactly.
That describes very vividly what happened on the cross. And so I feel like this is, and I know I think it's Isaiah 20, I don't know, it's Isaiah somewhere prophesied about it. So I have heard prophecy of the cross. I feel like mostly it's misinterpreted.
Yes. Here was the thing I heard is that obviously when he wrote that, it wasn't said to be a prophecy, right? They didn't say this is what's going to happen to the Son of Man. However, on other times they talk about the Messiah coming, right? Specifically. So the dude I was listening to, I think it was yesterday or the day before on some podcast, was saying the reason that it wasn't labeled of, hey, God's going to come back and he's going to die for our sins. We knew God's going to come back. And so everybody went, oh, he's going to come back and he's going to just wipe out all these kingdoms is why they thought he's going to come in on as a warrior and all these things, right? And he was saying the reason everybody thought that is because it wasn't specifically said he's going to be killed. And the reason being is if it was said, the demons wouldn't have killed him, which was an interesting thing to say.
Yeah.
However, this is true that if you look through all these things, even with Abraham and all these, Isaac, like you said, and all these people, you can see connections of the way God connected all the dots, like right there,
and
which
I
is
feel like
crazy.
That's kind of that sounds like what that guy was saying, is that it was just misinterpreted, the prophecies, because like that's what this is saying, but maybe they didn't realize at the time this is exactly what would happen. I'm wanting to read the rest of the psalm, but we're on a podcast, so I want to keep my mind locked on what we're doing. But
you can read it if you want to read it on the podcast.
Long. It's 31 verses.
Oh, well.
Yeah, well, I mean, but that was just something that I looked up real quick and just, that's vividly describing. But, it could be a situation David was in. and like I said, I'm not gonna speak too far on it just because
Let's
I
say,
haven't
like-
read the psalm before that. I haven't read the chapter before that, and the chapter after, and the chapter that it's in.
To connect it.
So I don't really know the exact context of it. So taking scripture out of context can sometimes be dangerous. So I don't want to
sure.
put too much behind it.
I have a verse that I like to use about like prophecy, and I even sometimes wonder if there's things that I read in the New Testament, not even just prophecy, but things that I'm reading that like later it'll make more sense. Like not only because it's a living word, but just like because of events that happen. And so the verse that I like to use a lot is 1 Corinthians 13:10. But when the perfect comes, the partial will pass away. And that one, but also verse 9, for we know now in part and we prophesy in part. And so for me, there was prophecy and then there's knowing. It's kind of like this hoping and knowing. Like we have this hope that Jesus is coming back. We know that he's coming back. We know that he prophesied that he's coming back. So we know in part, we prophesy in part, and we know kind of what it's going to look like. But when he comes back, all this partial stuff will pass away because we have the full picture now. It's like having a puzzle and not all the pieces. So you have a little bit of what's going to go on, but you don't have the whole puzzle. And so when you do put the whole puzzle together, this idea of the pieces that you had before just passes away.
And I love that. And on the idea of this psalm that David wrote, obviously, if you read the Psalms, we see that David went through a lot of hard times, right? And so David is going through this hard time, and he goes to write about it. And I think it's so interesting that in the way it wasn't necessarily labeled as a prophecy, God can be planting like ways to write in David's mind, because obviously it was directed by God to write this. And so he's writing this thing describing what's happening to him, to his soul and to his mind and all these things. And the way God's describing it is exactly what's going to happen. But in a way, back then, it wasn't labeled as a prophecy. So it's like a part that God gave us, but didn't label it as such. And now with our knowing, we can label it. So yeah, dude, solid. That was great. I personally love King David. I remember you just said that Psalm is your favorite. Psalm 23 is your favorite?
Yes.
I love Psalms, and I love reading Psalms at night, like when I'm about to go to bed. I have a little book of Psalms. I think it's like a cool thing to do. So one thing, number one is if there's anything you want to share, and then number two, we always do this thing with our guests where we like to have people share, whether it be a funny story, a testimony story, a cool story, whatever it be, first story that comes to mind, funny story to end this out or something. It can be anything, but for you to share a story from your life or your family's life or something.
Yeah, sweet. So I guess a testimony that I would have, which I'm trying to pick one, but I guess one of them would be during COVID, and God kind of got my whole family through this. It was pretty rough, but we were all getting COVID, and so I think my mom got it first, and so we decided, well, everybody else is probably gonna get it, so we're just not gonna quarantine. We'll quarantine ourselves, but we're not gonna separate my mom from the rest of the family until she gets better. And so, yeah, we just kind of had a big like COVID party almost, like everybody kind of went through. I mean, I got it, and eventually my dad got it, and he was feeling pretty good. He was like, "Oh yeah, this is just like a little cold or something." So he had a cabinet job he was working on at the time, and he goes my dad's a woodworker, and he goes in his cabinet shop and starts building cabinets, and he wakes up like I think probably about 4:30 in the morning the next day, and his oxygen level is like way down. I mean, it's below. I think it's below 70. Like it's way down there. And so we call our kind of like family practice doctor, Brett Thetford, 2 or 3 a.m. Or maybe 4, and he's like, okay, drive him to Willow Park Hospital outside of Hudson Oaks or by Hudson Oaks. It'll get him there faster if you drive him than if you drive him to like Comanche or somewhere and they take him there by ambulance. It'd be a lot faster if you just drive him directly to Willow Park. So that's what we did. We drove all the way to Weatherford to Willow Park Hospital, dropped him off in the ER, and he was there for like a week. They moved him to Fort Worth, and he ended up with COVID pneumonia, and it got in his lungs. It was pretty bad. He it got to the point he was like coughing up blood. He couldn't sleep, and so it was like me, my two siblings, and my mom are left all alone trying to run our ranch and take care of everything. There's it was kind of hectic, and my dad's over in the hospital feeling all bad, and he's usually the one he's taking care of the cows. He's doing all the hard, heavy lifting, and so that's mostly left up to me and my mom. And my mom's, mind you, is working like from home. She's still working from TxDOT for TxDOT while we're doing this, and so I'm pretty much left to do all the stuff that he's supposed to do while he's not there. And and not only the fact of like just it being a lot of work, but like me being scared for my dad. I remember one evening I was just sitting out there and I was feeling pretty bad. Like my dad's in the hospital and he's not doing good. And like, is he gonna make it through? Like, how long is this gonna happen? And I was just sitting over kind of in our backyard, and I had my guitar with me, and I just started playing. I started playing "Reckless Love" on my guitar, and I was singing it, and I was crying as I was singing it. And I got to the chorus again, and then all of a sudden, it hit me like just that God's got me. Kind of once again Psalm 23, the God's got me, and eventually y'all have heard the song, and maybe we'll put a clip of it on this. I later wrote a song about it, maybe like a year later, called Everything. But he just gave me an overwhelming peace, like just sitting there. I mean, sitting there with teardrops on my guitar, playing Reckless Love. God's like, it's gonna be okay. You'll be fine, and we're gonna get your dad out of the hospital. And so they tell him, this is kind of funny. They tell him whenever he gets out of the hospital, okay, don't be woodworking, especially while you're still sick, but you should probably just get out of the dust for a good while. And you should not get back on the fire department. My dad's a firefighter, and he said you need to stay off the fire department. And so yeah, my dad's a stubborn guy, and so he got back. He maybe took like a week or two break from woodworking, got right back at it, finished the cabinet job, and got back on the fire department pretty recently. And so now he's back on the DeLeon Volunteer Fire Department. I forgot the acronym. I'm just on the spot there. But so now he's back on the fire department. He's back doing all that, kind of doing what he loves. And he had a great recovery, but it was scary there. And we've had health scare. I mean, heck, in Colorado, y'all were there recently, and so it's just cool to see, the Lord takes care of you like that. Whenever things don't look good. My brother, I would try to make this short. We were up in Colorado, and my brother had a medical condition, medical episode on the mountain, and so they're outside of Silverton, and the closest surgeon that could get there, they get into Silverton while they have cell service. My dad's looking for the surgeon, and the dispatch lady finds a traveling surgeon, not even supposed to be based in Durango, but he's there by Providence. He's there, and so he books it to Durango. They were trying to figure out if they're going to Ouray, Durango, Denver, wherever. And the dispatch lady's like, "There's a urologist in Durango. You need to get to Durango." So he's he's going like 90 down these mountain roads. All these people are calling him into the cops. He swerves around an elk that had been hit, and so people now are calling him in thinking that he hit the elk. And he gets in Durango. He gets stopped by the police. He shows him his firefighter ID. He's like, "I need you to escort me." And the guy escorts him to the hospital. And, they get there, and my brother's surgery went well. He ended up being able to stay for the rest of the camp out, for like a week. I mean, he couldn't do anything active. I think today's his first day that he's actually allowed to be like doing stuff. Of course, he's been doing stuff because my brother, he's active. He can't keep him down. But yeah, I mean, it went smoothly. My mom flew up. All kinds of crazy stuff happened. But, the Lord, took care of us, I mean, it was my sister and I were left home for like a day. We went to church and we ended up getting with the Otwells, Derek and them, and everybody was taken care of. Everything went fine. But, I mean, it's scary in the moment, but the Lord takes care of you, so.
Yeah, the Lord provides, man. Dude, those were some crazy cool stories. I remember hearing the one about your dad. That's funny.
I was laughing whenever he told me about that. We were in the truck driving that road, and he was telling me how he was speeding and all this stuff, and I couldn't stop laughing, like just thinking of my dad going.
I can see your dad doing that. I can
it.
see him doing it so much, like hauling butt all the way back. Anyways, well, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And hopefully if we get a song recorded later today, it's going to be here at the end of the podcast, so stay tuned.
Thanks for watching, guys. If you want to see more stuff like this, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and follow. We're also on Instagram as well as Spotify. If you have a topic or a question that you want us to talk about, we would love to talk about it. And so drop it in the comments. We'd love to answer it there or on the podcast. We hope you're having a great day, and hopefully we made your day a little bit better. Peace.